Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Drive-in breach, sports drink freaks, and a Death Wish recall. Plus This Day in History with Phil Spector Charged and our Song of the Day by Wild Ones on your Morning Monarchy for September 27th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to wherever you are. Good morning. Thank you so much for listening. We are independent, non-commercial, alternative media every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, MediaMonarchy.com/listen, and we are brought to you by you at the support page. Huge thanks to all our donors, patrons, cheerleaders, fans, all of you. Love you. Appreciate you. It is Wednesday. That's food, health, and environment news. Hashtag food, world order, and all the stories we're going to talk about. We tweeted out about an hour before showtime. You can find all those at the top of the tweets, as well the invite to the chat, where not only do you get to hang out in the chat, and you can talk to Crimson Mist and Astro and Head in the Jar and Nivik and Chef Jake, but you can also listen to the show through there as well. It's kind of a one-stop shop. It's pretty awesome. So we've got all the food, health, and environment news you need. I coined the phrase food world order several years ago, and we've been using it ever since, and only as the years go by do we continue to lead headlong into a food world order. Let's glance at the breaking lamestream news before we dive into it. The middle class doesn't want a tax cut, it wants better government, so says the Washington Compost. Why haven't you helped to do that? North Carolina, latest to suffer in 2017 hurricane season. And Mad Dog Mattis, target of failed Kabul airport rocket attack, the Taliban says. Always interesting, of course, when the war pigs head over to the war zone, usually dodging missiles. Trump slams Facebook's collusion and fake news media for conspiring against him. Saudi women celebrate news that they will finally be allowed to drive. We broke that news for you yesterday during our daily DJ set at noon, which we've remarked a lot of times by the time we're in afternoon here on the West Coast. That's when all the news, all the craziness starts to come out yesterday. So we actually go over news even on our daily DJ set at noon that we call Pump Up the Volume. I'm not sure if you have to have an adult with you at all times, like a learner's permit, like when you're a 15-year-old kid here in the States. Some of the other sidebar news from Peak Portland: KKK recruitment sticker found in a Portland high school bathroom. Does it have a QR code to their new high-tech website? But let's get the fact check, because how could you head off into the conventional world without a little fact check from the BBC? Is it more effective if you're in a good mood when you get the flu vaccine? This is what they've been reduced to. World opinion of Trump and U.S. from factcheck.org. Donald Trump tweeted about an Iranian missile test. Did it happen? Better go to PolitiFact for that. Is fentanyl-laced marijuana on the rise? Holy shit. I don't know, Snopes. That sounds like a terrible idea. However, if we were in a free country, adults could do whatever they want and put whatever they want in their body, which we firmly believe in. And then the last fact-check note, Ellie Fanning and Maisie Williams feuding? You have to go to Gossip Cop to learn what any of those words mean, because I'm not really sure. You have to talk about that on Friday when we talk about the entertainment industrial complex. That's Media Memes. Each day of the week, a different subject. Monday's World News, Tuesday's Tech, and Wednesday is Food, Health, and Environment News. And, of course, all you freaks love to join us tomorrow for the Holy Hex's underbelly conspiratorial occult look at the news. And, yes, on Wednesdays, we also tape latest episode of New World Next Week, the long-running series between myself and James Corbett of Corbett Report, who has apparently put up a new video about bacon and eggs that I don't see a lot of people being happy about. I have not seen Corbett's new bacon and eggs video as I come to you on this Wednesday morning, September 27th, 2017. We'll have to look at that later. Maybe we'll talk about it when we tape New World Next Week a little bit later today. So a perfect transition from yesterday's technology news into today's food, health, and environment news means it's a day of the week that ends in Y, which, no, that doesn't mean those are the days that you drink. It means another national company's payment system has been compromised. This time, it's the Sonic drive-in fast food chain where potentially millions of credit card numbers have been stolen. Now, aside from commenting on using credit cards to buy little garbage pieces of meat, it's a little over. I think George Carlin made fun of that many moons ago, but George Carlin wasn't around to see how we would become the cashless system. Krebs on Security.com confirmed the breach with Sonic after recently coming across a for-sale stash of around 5 million stolen credit card numbers. According to Krebs, a common link for some of those purloined credit card numbers was that they had been recently used to make purchases at Sonic. It's not clear yet whether all 5 million cards for sale in that batch were stolen from the same source or if they're taken from multiple sources. When reached for comment by Consumerist, which is where we're grabbing this article from, and again, everything we say and play will always be included in the show notes. Sonic provided a statement identical to the one it gave to Krebs, saying that it learned last week from its credit card processor that there was unusual activity tied to cards that had been used at the fast food chain. We're working to understand the nature and scope of this issue, as we know how important this is to our guests. We immediately engaged third-party forensics experts and law enforcement when we heard from our processor. While law enforcement limits the information we can share, we will communicate additional information as we are able. I think in some ways you would almost file this under, when these embarrassing hacks and leaks all come out. Oh no, all the people that are going to be embarrassed because they had Ashley Madison accounts, which of course all turns into dudes looking for dudes. And fake accounts. This is another embarrassment. Oh, my credit card was hacked. Oh, was it something at Barney's or maybe Tiffany's? No, it was Sonic. I got two stories that segue from cyberspace war news into food world order news as we hop from consumerists over to tech dirt. By this point, the half-baked security in most Internet of Things devices have become a bit of a running joke, leading to amusing Twitter accounts like Internet of Shit, which I had never followed before, but last night prepping the show, I immediately did. I think one of my favorite ones I saw in there, that is, if your kid's not drinking water from a gamified, app-connected Internet of Things bottle, then you're a terrible parent. So Twitter accounts like Internet of Shit, which we just see in the chat, some of our users, guests, know that the Internet of Shit is the shit. It can highlight the sordid depth of this particularly apathy rabbit hole. While refrigerators leaking your Gmail credentials and tea kettles that expose your home networks are entertaining in their own way, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the same half-ass security in the Internet of Things space also exists on most home routers, on your car, and your pacemaker. Not to mention countless other essential devices and services that your life might depend on. The lack of security in the medical front is particularly alarming. The latest case in point, security researchers have discovered 8 vulnerabilities in a syringe infusion pump used by hospitals to help administer medication to patients intravenously. Now, Raleigh, you're joking in the chat about your dildo got hacked. We've already talked about those stories. There are Internet of Things connected vibrators and dildos. Not your vibrator. It's the vibrator. The flaws in the Metafusion 4000 infusion pump, manufactured by UK medical multinational Smiths Group, worst Smiths ever, were discovered by security researcher Scott Guyou. The device is utilized to deliver medications, blood, antibiotics, and other fluids to critical care patients. Critical care. Oh, wait, no, critical cure is what I like. Also, patients undergoing surgery, anesthesia, newborn babies. The flaws were severe enough to warrant a new warning from the Department of Homeland Security, which issued an advisory that, like similar past advisories, rather downplays the fact that these flaws could be utilized by a skilled hacker to kill somebody covertly. They said, quote, "Successful exploitation of these vulnerabilities may allow a remote attacker to gain unauthorized access and impact the intended operation of the pump. Despite the segmented design, it may be possible for an attacker to compromise the communications module and the therapeutic module of the pump. Impact to individual organizations depends on many factors that are unique to each organization. ICS-CERT recommends that organizations evaluate the impact of these vulnerabilities based on their operational environment and specific clinical usage." Both the FDA and the Department of Homeland Security have ramped up the attention they're giving to such vulnerabilities, recently having issued similar first-ever warnings about flaws in pacemakers by St. Jude Medical, which can be similarly used and abused to kill patients. And while this is all wonderful news if you're a wet worker operating in an environment where such flaws take years to discover, much less fix, it's decidedly less fun for the companies being criticized for half-assed security measures. In most cases, the companies impacted make it their top priority to downplay the risks involved, as the Smiths Group did in their statement on the vulnerabilities. Quote, "The possibility of this exploit taking place in a clinical setting is highly unlikely, as it requires a complex and unlikely series of conditions." I never thought they would use hijack planes as weapons and fly them into buildings. We never would have thought that, except for all the people who told us about the ideas and all the war games and drills we ran with the exact same thing. So except for 6 of the vulnerabilities in question, simply involving the use of hard-coded credentials, the same problem that has plagued the home router market for years. For its part, Smiths says it's working hard to implement a fix for these flaws that might be released in January 2018. In the interim, Smiths is urging hospitals to assess the risk, change the default login credentials. Yeah, don't make your name, password. What your password is, taco. Disconnect these devices from the network where necessary, but considering the low quality of IT support in most hospitals, a major reason for a massive spike in, those recent hospital ransomware attacks, there is certainly no guarantee of any of these mitigation measures actually happening. This report from Techdirt, Smart Hospital IV Pump Vulnerable to Remote Hack Attack, was actually published last Friday on September 22nd, but we can go back all the way to August 1st, 2015 to talk about hacking your heart.
And next to a threat we have never before seen, a common medical device found in so many hospital rooms could be vulnerable to a cyber attack. The FDA warning hospitals be on alert for hackers. Here's ABC's Aditi Roy.
Hospitals across the country receiving an unprecedented warning by the FDA tonight that a commonly used medical device may be at risk of getting hacked. The device, Hospira's Symbic infusion pump, is used to deliver medications like painkillers and cancer treatments to patients through an IV. In its warning, the FDA says an unauthorized user with malicious intent could access the pump remotely and modify the dosage it delivers.
So every hospital should assume that its devices, if connected to the internet, can be attacked. And so it's an important warning. This is not an isolated incident.
Hospira says it deployed an update to provide customers with an extra layer of security until the pump is completely off the market in a few months, a move already in the works before this warning. This new worry over healthcare hacks comes just after Fiat Chrysler issued a voluntary recall of 1.4 million vehicles to install software to prevent hacking.
Kill the engine.
A vulnerability seen in this demonstration video when hackers took control of this Jeep. These 2 cases showing how the rewards of technology also come with risks.
And the FDA says there was no specific hacking attempt that prompted this warning, but still says there's a very real possibility, Cecilia, this could happen.
A scary possibility too, Aditi. Thank you.
So be very afraid. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, your host, webmaster, DJ, and so very much more, serving up Food World Order news on a Wednesday for you. So has a very technological feel. Don't worry, it'll slowly get more into the gushy parts of food, health, and environment news. And then as the end of this episode will roll up, it gets weird and we set ourselves up for Thursday. Almost 2 weeks have passed since Hurricane Irma made landfall in South Florida, yet tens of thousands remain without power. You see, this is still the technological parts meeting the physical parts. With the temperatures regularly going over 90 degrees, the outage is not only a grave inconvenience for Floridians cleaning up after the storm, but of course have proved to be deadly. Given the power of Irma, it's not surprising that it's left behind incredible devastation. Unfortunately, it's also not surprising that it's a government-protected utility that has done the most to impede recovery. One of the most talked about examples of how bad policy is making things worse for Florida families are a variety of government policies that discourages the use of solar power in the Sunshine State. Government policy dictates that Floridians are required to be connected to the central power grid even if they have enough solar panels installed to power their house on its own. You must be on the grid. Because of this requirement, families stuck in areas without power with solar panels installed cannot use them now because doing so could endanger workers trying to restore power for other neighbors. And I don't know if that means they'd get zapped or shocked. Seems a little far-fetched. Once again, government's desire for centralized control has unintended consequences. Government regulation and crony capitalism is keeping thousands in Florida without power, Let's go to Bob for more.
Would have power back on for Miami-Dade and Broward counties by midnight tonight, but here is a look at the latest outages. FPL reports 11,240 in Miami-Dade and 1,990 in Broward. CBS 4's Gary Nelson is live outside of the FPL headquarters with more on the back and forth between the company and some cities unhappy it's taken so long to get the lights back on. Gary.
Well, we're at FPL's regional headquarters here on Flagler Street in West Miami-Dade. This is a company embroiled in a very ugly dispute now with the City Beautiful, Coral Gables.
On day 10 after Irma, thousands remained without power in Miami-Dade and Broward. This Pinecrest wife and mother asked we use only her maiden name for fear of retaliation, she said, by FPL.
It's been terrible. It's been really hard, especially with my mother, who has been in the shelter at Baptist Hospital, and she's the last patient there.
Coral Gables has been issuing citations and fines to FPL since Monday for what it calls a failure to prepare for and respond to Irma's tropical storm force winds. FPL lashed out at the Gables in a statement saying, in part, frivolous lawsuits and ludicrous code violations will not work. The company blamed the Gables for not cutting back trees around power lines, saying the city is now paying the price due to hundreds of trees that have fallen into our lines. Coral Gables says that claim is preposterous.
FPL has the duty, the right and the duty, to cut back those trees. The city is not allowed to trim trees around power lines.
FPL declined to respond beyond Monday night's statement, calling the Gables' actions frivolous and ludicrous.
Now that we are in litigation, all we're able to talk about is in the statement.
Coral Gables intends to sue FPL, not for money, the city says, but to make sure the company maintains a system that can hold up in a storm and respond more quickly.
Other cities could also be helped by this action that we're doing. We're hoping to help all of South Florida get better infrastructure for power.
And 10 days after Irma, FPL was still working to put its infrastructure back together.
Now, the city of Coral Gables, if it presses on with its lawsuit against FPL, and it says it fully intends to, expects that other cities will join in that lawsuit. Already, a class action suit has been filed on behalf of FPL customers. We're live in West Miami-Dade. Gary Nelson, CBS 4 News.
Thanks, Gary. Sorry I called you Bob. It's frivolous, ludicrous, outrageous. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. And you don't have America's Wang to run away to. So they're expanding the amount of characters you can use on Twitter. We learned about that late last night. And as I'm looking at the tweets, it looks like Moon Pie are one of the earliest people to try out the new 280 character limit on Twitter, as Twitter races to act like everything else, which is going to be the race to make all of us leave it. Also see from our friend Katie Aguilera, famous fake news writer found dead in Phoenix. This is other breaking news we're seeing for you. As the news never stops, and again, we are not only crowdfunded, but we are crowdsourced. Our news is brought to you by you. A leading purveyor of fake news in the 2016 presidential race has died outside of Phoenix at the age of 38. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office spokesman Mark Casey said Tuesday authorities discovered Paul Horner dead in his bed on September 18th. Casey said the Maricopa County medical examiner performed an autopsy, said there were no signs of foul play. He said Horner had a history of prescription drug abuse, and that evidence at the scene suggested this could be an accidental overdose. Horner was known for writing false stories and disseminating internet hoaxes that often went viral on Facebook and hoodwinked thousands of people. They included a story falsely claiming President Barack Obama was gay and a radical Muslim, and another saying protesters were being paid thousands of dollars to demonstrate at Donald Trump's campaign rallies. So it sounds like this guy did stories that what AP would like to call fake news are actually just uninvestigated stories. There are many, many, many accusations about Barack Obama being gay, not the least of which made by Joan Rivers. Do y'all know I was one of the last people to interview Joan Rivers? Type Joan Rivers on my search bar. And pretty sure it's been proven that lots of paid protesters were being paid to go protest people. Pretty sure we've seen the paperwork for that. Now we just wait to see if he shot himself in the head twice. So breaking news for you there on your Morning Monarchy. Let's continue our food, health, and environment news as we continue to thank our good friends in the government. They're legendary for wasting money on pointless projects. The latest example, the National Institute of Health is spending $686,000, $686,350, on a study that will pay fat teenagers to stop overeating. More specifically, the study conducted by the University of Minnesota, good job, y'all, is trying to determine whether paying teens to drink health shakes like Slim Fast instead of eating is an effective tool for losing weight. Basically, can you bribe kids to eat healthy? The grant justifies the study on the grounds that, quote, severe obesity is the fastest growing category of pediatric obesity, with a reported prevalence near 6% in the United States. Unfortunately, conventional treatment approaches rarely result in sufficient weight loss in adolescents with severe obesity. Therefore, innovative and effective strategies are desperately needed. The financial incentive model has been used successfully in adult obesity trials to address suboptimal adherence to lifestyle modification therapy and improves weight loss outcomes. I think that is the long way of saying fatty got no willpower. Some YouTube comments yesterday. You're obsessed with the clothes and the robes that those guys are wearing. You're just feeding into the identity politics. No. They can make fun of how I dress. That's what it's all about. Continuing, although yet to be investigated as a weight loss intervention among adolescents, financial incentives have been shown to improve many health-related behaviors in teenagers. Pay the parents to do some parenting? That sounds crazy. There's no question that obesity in America is a problem, and given the enormous health costs associated with obesity, ranging from an increased risk of heart attacks to diabetes to elevated risks of cancers, it makes sense to look for a solution. But is this, as InvestmentWatchBlog.com asks, really the best use of theft dollars? No, it's a complete waste of money because we're not going to learn anything new. Multiple studies have already been done on the subject. As the Washington Free Beacon reported, a 2012 Canadian study details several obesity payment programs used by other countries. The payment cites United Kingdom's Nudge Unit, which started a program called Pounds for Pounds. The program rewarded obese Brits with up to $577 if they managed weight loss for 6 to 12 months. 600 obese participants with an average starting weight of 218 pounds lost an average of 14 pounds in 6 months and 29 pounds over 12 months. The payments amounted to between $19 and $41 for every pound lost. The 2012 study concluded that short-term payment incentive programs are not as effective as those that continue to pay people for losing weight for a long period of time. Stop the presses. People like more money than less money. The NIH has funded several similar studies involving paying patients to be healthier. One study that's cost taxpayers $3.6 million since 2013 is paying low-income pregnant women to not smoke cigarettes. Another UCLA study, which has cost $1.4 million in taxpayer money, is giving financial incentives for obese adults to shed pounds. Oh, and you're exactly right, Head. See, we've been talking about this in the chat for a lot because as we do these shows live, some of y'all are out there at your cubes. Others are in cars, others are in gardens, and actually I had somebody write in the other day and said, hey, you list off places where people listen, but you don't mention the shower. Hey, hope you're doing well in the shower. Don't slip. Glad you're taking Media Monarchy along with you wherever you go. The employee wellness programs that have rolled out at all the workplaces. Just getting those kids used to the employee wellness programs. Because you aren't smart enough to know that you should probably go for a run or go for a bike ride and that you probably shouldn't eat all that junk. You have to be paid by your workplace, which again is just stealing taxpayer money so they can get grants, so they can get all of your biometrics and your personal information. That's what we joked about yesterday. Oh man, I can't go swimming with my tracker device to get my employee wellness credits. Well, that won't be a problem once they microchip you. So let's hop from the U.S. government wasting $686,000+ paying fat teenagers to drink Slim Fast as we head on up to our neighbors from the north. Now, longtime Media Monarchy listeners will know that last year we discussed Canadian kids getting fatter. I think all the sort of fantasies about, oh, Canada's so much better, we're going to run away to Canada, it's so great, they've got this, they've got that, have all pretty much fallen apart as basically the North American Union's kind of been squashed in the middle. And hey, that's all about leveling the playing field, right? We're going to raise Mexico up and we'll lower Canada down. So we've talked about how Canadian kids are becoming sedentary, but there are just a few less little chubby Canucks that are really into sports, and nothing goes with sports like Brondo.
One lap. Sports drinks are the beverage of choice at most games. They fill bottles and vending machines.
I think it's part of the hockey culture. Lots of famous players sponsor it. It's everywhere in the rink.
The electrolytes in sports drinks are supposed to replenish athletes after a heavy workout, but they're also loaded with sugar.
So we went to the pediatrician recently, and he was quite appalled because I told him that we probably drink 6 Gatorades a week when playing hockey. Each of the kids does. And he thought that was awful and suggested we go directly to water.
That's the advice from the Canadian Pediatric Society, which warns of the risk of obesity, weight gain, and tooth decay.
An athlete like Sidney Crosby may actually need those sports drinks, right? But your average child or average youth doesn't.
Add to the mix energy drinks, often sold alongside sports drinks. Similar, but with a potent dose of caffeine, which could have serious side effects on young people. In May, this U.S. teen died after binging on pop, coffee, and an energy drink.
Scoring the big goal.
The Canadian Beverage Association says companies are discouraged from marketing sweetened drinks to anyone under 12. But sports heroes are influential.
So when I see Sidney Crosby doing it, it inspires me to do it too because he's really good at hockey.
It tastes good and it gives you power on the ice.
Health advocates warn sports and energy drinks are as bad, if not worse, than most pop.
So they're saying on paper, we're not marketing to children and youth under the age of 12, but in actuality, we're seeing that's vastly different.
As for Norma Walton, her kids tried to make the switch to water, but have since given in to their craving for sports drinks.
Well, it's got what Canucks crave. No, I don't know who Sidney Crosby was. I had to look him up. Apparently, he was born on August 7th, so he's a fellow Leo. Oh, he's born in the year Pop achieved perfection in 1987. Sidney Patrick Crosby is a Canadian professional ice hockey player who serves as captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins of the National Hockey League. After an exceptional minor and junior career, Crosby was one of the most highly regarded draft picks in hockey history. See, you can even get your jock-o-rama coverage on your Media Monarchy, because that's how crazy things have gotten anymore. Oh, we got some Pittsburgh love in the chat. Yeah, Andy's over there. So this is another situation where, is it the kid's fault? No, of course it's not the kid's fault. They're going to see shit on TV and they're going to want it, just like you did, just like I did. It's up to the parents to say no. But from what I can tell from my generation, parents don't really say no. They say, oh, well, what do you want for dinner, sweetie? You're listening to The Morning Monarchy, and let's continue with our jock-o-rama coverage. Holy moly. It is 2017. If you showed up to the Baltimore Ravens home opener 2 Sundays ago, expecting to get your free DNA test, you were likely sorely disappointed. The NFL team's planned promotion with Origin, with Orig 3N, O-R-I-G 3N is how it's stylized. I'm sure it's supposed to be pronounced Origin. Was canceled at the last minute following increased scrutiny from federal and state health officials. The Baltimore Sun reports that Origin and the Ravens will postpone the Ravens' DNA Day until later this year after the Maryland Health Department and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services raised concerns about the giveaway. The currently scrapped promotion involved gifting 55,000 guests. There are those guests again. At M&T Bank Stadium, a Ravens-themed Origin DNA kit, complete with materials that exclaim, "Purple and black are in your jeans. Now find out what else is." In a grammatically incorrect statement. The kits were billed as offering insight into your mind, body, and health. Specifically, they would have tested 4 genes, including those that determine if a person has enhanced performance in power and spirit activities. You know, that power you need on the ice. As well as a gene that can predict an increased risk of low levels of vitamin D, like living in the Pacific Northwest. Those taking part in the test simply would have swabbed the inside of their cheek with the provided materials and dropped the sample into bins located in the stadium. Participants then register with the company online in order to receive their results, but the promotion was put on hold before anybody could get their hands on the test. Origin confirmed to The Sun on Sunday that the giveaway was postponed in response to questions from state and feds. We're working to address the questions from blah, blah, blah. The issues reported came to a head when HHS's Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services raised questions with the state about approvals for such tests. CMS said that Origin may be required to obtain certification related to laboratory testings of humans before the promotion can move forward. A representative for the Maryland Department of Health confirmed to the Baltimore Sun that it was looking into the promotion and whether Origin was following state laws. For instance, direct-to-consumer lab testing is prohibited in Maryland, but genetic testing is allowed when conducted by approved labs, like the fine work done at Fort Meade and Fort Detrick. I found myself late the other night over the weekend on historycommons.org just reading their complete timeline about the anthrax attacks. It's always good in some ways to keep your research sharp, something I've been guilty of letting slide for the last several years. I worked at a dumbass commercial radio station. It made me kind of a dumbass. Trying to make it better. Glad you guys are here. While the matter could not be remedied in time for Sunday's game, the state health department is working with both the Ravens and Origin collaboratively to help resolve this issue. As for when the new promotion will take place, that is currently undecided. We received an overwhelmingly positive response to the first ever DNA Day, and we remain committed to our mission, Origin said in its statement to the Baltimore Sun. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the Ravens. Quote the Raven, "You idiot slave." Is there anything on the idiot box that you won't fall for? That you won't let make you mad? That you won't get into? Oh, that's the biggest, best thing. I should probably just give away all of my personal information with a swab of a Q-tip. Sorry, that's a brand name. That's a... I can't come up with the generic name for what Q-tips are. We'll have to think of that the other way. And as we swab the other cheek... Let's go to the Cornell Chronicle, shall we? News.cornell.edu. Oh, that's right. They're just generic cotton swabs. Like tissues and those sorts of things. Angelina Jolie's 2013 announcement detailing her decision to undergo a mastectomy to reduce her risk of developing breast cancer likely inspired more women in English-speaking countries to do the same. This according to a new study by researchers at the Weill Cornell Medicine and the University of New South Wales in Australia. Using hospital discharge data from New York State and New South Wales from 2004 to 2014 to examine trends in risk-reducing mastectomy, RRM, the researchers identified a significant increase in procedures starting in May 2013, 3 months after Jolie's announcement. They say their findings, published September 25th in Health Services Research, reveal celebrities have power to influence the healthcare decisions of the general public, and healthcare professionals should leverage this effect by offering more information about treatment options, especially in regard to genetic testing results. See what we're putting together for you here? This is an important area of research that healthcare providers and policymakers need to pay attention to. If celebrities are going to act on genetic testing and announce their treatment choices, then we should get prepared on our end to assess public health impact. So when we let think tanks and NGOs and shadowy organizations with front groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, when they are engineering the consent of the masses, we need to be set up to test how effective that's going. That sounds basically like what they said. If celebrities are going to act on genetic testing and announce their treatment choices, then we should get prepared on our end to assess public health impact. We should see how much they go for it. The study found that 20 months before Jolie's announcements, there was an average of 3.3 bi-monthly RRM cases per million women in New York. 20 months after the announcement, there were an average of 6.3 bi-monthly RRM cases per 1 million women in New York. Rates of RRM in New South Wales were relatively similar. The 2015 UK study showed an increase of RRM after Jolie's announcement, but this new study shows correlation in 2 separate English-speaking countries, which also helps rule out local influences on RRM rates. It also validates previous studies that showed singer Kylie Minogue's 2005 breast cancer diagnosis led to an increase in breast imaging among Australian women aged 25 to 44. Both the Kylie effect and the Jolie effect demonstrate the power of celebrity illness and treatment to generate intense media coverage and change consumer behavior. Thanks, Council on Foreign Relations. Breast cancer study confirms the Angelina Jolie effect. Now, as Margareta Hawkins replied on our tweets, my mother and one of her sisters died from metastasized breast cancer. I fight the fear with the best prevention. Regular self-exams. We all know that. We've all known that. We were told that as kids in school. You get the diagrams. It's very easy. Oh, yeah, you can giggle about it. But now, 25 plus years go by and you go, oh, that's right. It's very easy. Dudes, in the shower, roll your balls around. It's that simple. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Good Lord, can we get a little bit of good news? The USDA announces 2016 sales of U.S.-certified organic agricultural production up 23% from previous years. No, the previous year, 23% from 2016 to 2015. Sales of organic agricultural production continue to increase in 2016 when U.S. farms produced and sold $7.6 billion in certified organic commodities. Yes, they've been gaming the labels. Yes, they've been gaming the system. Doc Bronner's left the Organic Trade Association because they're gaming all those numbers. The good news here is you can choose what goes in your fridge. This isn't about some trendy thing. This isn't about whole paycheck. This isn't about TV commercials. This is about eating food and having food that your family eats not be covered in pesticides and chemicals. It's pretty much that simple. So that's a little bit of good news, and let's continue on our food, health, and environment news as it starts to get dark at this point. Flexing the antitrust muscles recently enacted for a class of medications called biologics. Pfizer accuses Johnson & Johnson in a federal complaint of stifling competition against its brand name arthritis treatment. For many patients suffering from chronic diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, plaque psoriasis, and Crohn's disease, the best and sometimes the only option for treatment is infusion therapy with infliximab. Infliximab, INFLIXIMAB. A September 20th complaint states using the generic name for a biologic that Johnson & Johnson markets as Remicade. Noting that patients with these chronic conditions often require long-term treatment and multiple infusions per year, Pfizer says Remicade has been raking in profits for Johnson & Johnson since 1998 as the only game in town. Pfizer introduced Inflectra, the first biosimilar product to Remicade in 2016, but it says Remicade still made $4.8 billion in U.S. sales that year, making it Johnson & Johnson's best-selling drug by far. Claiming abuse of improper exclusionary tactics, Pfizer seeks relief under the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act, a law passed by Congress to ensure meaningful price competition for biologics defined as medications derived from living organisms. The BPCIA has been in place since 2010, but Pfizer notes it took several more years before the FDA procedures for implementing the law took effect. Moreover, the FDA only approved the first biosimilars, meaning a biologic that it's determined to have no clinical meaningful differences from the already approved drug in 2015. Pfizer says Johnson & Johnson worked from the get-go to undercut Inflectra's launch. So this article goes on and gets into some of the nitty-gritty back and forth in courtrooms in Philadelphia, and we're grabbing this from Courthouse News. Yeah, what they don't actually tell you is, the real names are just like a variety of ancient demons. Johnson & Johnson accused of stifling competition on biologics. Now again, I kind of think, much like we noted yesterday when cops and military guys got swept up in the kettling in St. Louis. God, this might be a good thing. If we can get the cops and the military all fighting with each other, they might leave us the fuck alone. We file this under Food World Order and Pot Kettle Black. Johnson & Johnson accused by fellow pharmaflux Pfizer of monopolizing new drugs extracted from biologics. Now, you might recall, if you were paying attention during the 8 years of the President Peace Prize, he was a big fan and a big friend of the pharmaceutical industries. As is typical more with the fake left, They're more into the pharmaceuticals and the media and that kind of stuff, universities and stuff. And then the fake right, they're into like war and oil and that kind of shit. Big Obama moves over his last few years in his administration. Big Pharma isn't coming up with enough drugs. I can't remember the exact headline, but basically, Obama says Big Pharma needs to come up with more new drugs. Meanwhile, some places are maybe getting a little nervous because the crackdown's coming. You have to be living under a rock to not know that lots of veterans, lots of street people, lots of people just trying to beat some pain moved from opioids to heroin. It's pretty obvious that's what happened. I've talked about that many, many times in my home state of West Virginia. Now some places are trying to limit it and back off it a little bit. CVS Pharmacy will limit opioid prescriptions to a 7-day supply for certain conditions, becoming the first national retail chain to restrict how many pain pills doctors can give patients.
At CVS stores across the country, patients seeking opiates for short-term pain management will soon be limited to just a 7-day supply. The pharmacy chain attempting to turn the tide on the opioid epidemic.
If fewer people become addicted, they'll lead better lives, we'll eliminate human suffering.
John Schutt's addiction started with a knee injury at 14.
I got another refill of 30 when I didn't even need the refill.
That led to heroin.
It took my happiness. It took away, what life is really about.
Doctors wrote more than 225 million opioid prescriptions in 2015. That's 71 prescriptions per 100 patients. CVS's plan mirrors CDC recommendations, asking pharmacists to contact doctors when they see prescriptions for more medication than a typical recovery time. The company also plans to boost funding for addiction counseling and safe opioid disposal programs.
I think our customers overall are going to be heartened by this.
Patients with chronic conditions would have dosage limits, with a few exceptions like cancer treatment. Today, the National Academy of Medicine issued a report suggesting doctors be more careful when prescribing opiates.
We all have to bear responsibility and play a role if we're going to get ourselves out of this epidemic.
John Schutt, now 15 months clean, says for him limits might have made a difference.
It was just saving that one person that could have been, had a more successful life.
So that one prescription doesn't become an addiction.
Now, of course, we suggest for your chronic conditions that the best tonic is chronic. And yes, there is pretty much a drug highway that kind of rolls through West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Pretty much a Detroit to D.C. pipeline, I-79, I-70. You're exactly right. Now, the cynical take on this, as if I had a nickel for every time I'd be called cynical. Dr. Mrs. Girlfriend, one of our better tweeters that gets us lots of fantastic news, is betting the legal department at CVS is aiming to limit their legal exposure since a few states are already suing big pharma companies over those opiates. So that's a little bit of the cynical angle, which I think is a lot of times the healthy angle. Let me ask you a question that I know the answer to. Would you be okay with letting a stranger into your house for the sake of convenience? Walmart is testing the idea with a new service that lets a delivery person walk into your home when you're not there to drop off packages or put groceries in your fridge.
Life today is busier than ever. You have a lot to get done and often don't have enough time to squeeze it all in. What if you didn't feel like you had to be in 2 places at once to get everything done? Walmart just may have a solution. It's a new concept we're testing with companies like August Home. The idea is you can choose to receive orders from Walmart.com, not just to your door and left on the front porch, but securely inside your home. If you're not home, rather than leaving the package on the front porch, the driver enters a one-time use code using the August Home app. You're alerted the moment the driver enters the code into the keypad, and can even watch the delivery as it happens through home security cameras. At Walmart, we're testing all kinds of new ways to make shopping faster and more convenient, so you don't have to be in 2 places at once. We're moving fast to find more ways to save you time and money because, well, you have a lot to get done.
Walmart wants to come into your home and stock your fridge while you're not there. The retail giant is teaming up with smart security company August Home to test out delivering groceries and other items inside customer homes. It works like this. A customer orders things from Walmart.com and a delivery person brings the items to their house. That person gets a one-time passcode for the home smart lock. Then the homeowner can watch them on security cameras as they stock the fridge and bring in other items. The homeowner will get a notification once their door is locked. For now, Walmart is trying the idea with a select group of homes that already have August Home software. The test is part of Walmart's ultimate goal of making things more convenient for consumers. The company's delivery endeavor comes months after Amazon announced its acquisition of Whole Foods. Some outlets called the move a game changer in the grocery game.
Game changer indeed. Some interesting comments in the chat. Yeah, your dog might object to having a weird Walmart stranger come into your house. Other people, of course, avoid Walmart like the plague. But the thing to note in here is your smart home app lets them in with a one-time access code, which I'm sure will totally work and not malfunction. See previous Internet of Things stories. So they punch in with the smartphone app that gets in. They don't have a caveman key. That's ridiculous. Now the question is, why aren't you at home? Because you're either out working a double at Walmart and or trying to score some opiates. Now, Norman actually makes the interesting question, how about a one-time code on a secured cooler outside my house? I actually think that's a little more where Amazon is headed, so that when the drone comes up, they can drop something off in a secured, essentially, grounded, bolted down safe, basically. Yeah, because you need your smart fridge to tell you that the milk is sour. But if your milk is filled with a bunch of preservatives and garbage from a bunch of pussed out cows, it'll probably last a long time. Last few stories here on your Food World Order will segue perfectly into tomorrow's Holy Hexes news because people can't get enough of Pennywise, the child-eating, sewer-dwelling clown from the blockbuster film hit. Perhaps knowing this, a Dallas-area donut shop is offering a special 2-day-only delivery service that's sure to delight fans of Stephen King's terrifying clown creation for a $10 fee. Hurts Donut. Hurts Donut. That's funny. We'll have an employee dressed up like a monster clown to drop off a box of treats at your door. Of course, you can also request to have the red-haired circus mutant deliver a box of donuts to the workplace or the dwelling of a friend or perhaps enemy as well. And filed finally under Captain Obvious News, Death Wish Coffee recalled.
A popular coffee company is recalling a new product that may contain a deadly toxin. Death Wish Coffee Company is pulling their nitro brew cans because of the potential growth of botulin, a fatal toxin that attacks the body's nerves. Ingesting even a tiny amount of botulin can cause foodborne botulism. Botulism poisoning commonly comes from foods improperly canned that are low in acid, like green beans, corn, and beets. Recently, small outbreaks have occurred in New York due to unrefrigerated bulk tofu contamination. And in 2017, at least 10 patients were hospitalized after they ate a nacho cheese sauce served at a gas station near Sacramento, California. Symptoms of foodborne botulism can begin anywhere between 6 to 36 hours after ingestion, or as late as 10 days after eating contaminated food. Symptoms can include difficulty swallowing or speaking, facial weakness on both sides of the face, blurred or double vision, drooping eyelids, trouble breathing, and nausea and vomiting. Cases of foodborne botulism are sometimes treated by inducing vomiting and bowel movements. And if it's diagnosed early, antitoxin or antibiotics can also help.
Botulism, also used for wrinkles, clubfoot, tendinomy, alternatives, lips, and killing people. Has many, many uses. And I tried to quickly pull up the clip because I remember Baby Bush talking about botulinum toxin. Death Wish Coffee recalled because it may contain a potentially fatal toxin. Company says some nitro brew cans may contain botulin. Is nitro cold brew a big hipster thing in the city you live in? It sure goddamn is here in Peak Portland. And that's your Food World Order headlines, my friends. Hashtag Food World Order. All those stories and so very many more can be found using hashtag Food World Order. All the recalls, all the investigations, all the discoveries, all the research. All the food, health, and environment news is there for you. If this is your topic, explore that hashtag, and you can probably help us out. Because we are independent, non-commercial, alternative news. Speaking of peak Portland, we've been doing Portland bands all this week, and for our third day this week of Portland bands, brand new music from Wild Ones. You may recall us playing their fantastic Drake cover of a couple of years ago, and they've got a new record coming up, and I also got to interview them a couple of years ago as well, which you can find in the Media Monarchy archives. But first, let's look at this day in history, my friends. September 27th, 1590. Pope Urban VII dies 13 days after being chosen as Pope, making his reign the shortest papacy in history. 1822, Jean-Francois Champollion announces that he has deciphered the Rosetta Stone. You might help me pronounce his last name. September 27th, 1903, the wreck of the Old 97, an American rail disaster that became the subject of the popular ballad and also the name of a rock band. 1908, the first production of the Ford Model T was built at the Ford plant in Detroit. 1928, the Republic of China recognized by the United States. They're good buddies. September 27th, 1942, Glenn Miller and his orchestra performed together for the final time. A couple months later, I'll tell you what happened. September 27th, 1954, the nationwide debut of Tonight, starring Steve Allen, hosted by Steve Allen on NBC. He was the first. Then Jack Paar, then Johnny Carson. Actually, we watched the new Jerry Before Seinfeld stand-up bit on Netflix last night. Pretty damn good. September 27th, 1959, Typhoon Vera kills 5,000 in Japan, and on this day in 1962... Speaking of questionable things, Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring is published, inspiring an environmental movement and the creation of the EPA. 1968, the stage musical Hair opens at the Shaftesbury Theatre in London, where it played 1,998 performances until it was closed by the roof collapsing in July of 1973. On this day in 1973, Rolling Stone reports that Carlos Santana has changed his name to Devadip, now that he was a disciple of Sri Chinmoy. I think then later he got into Metatron and other hokey spiritual hullabaloo. September 27, 1979, the United States Department of Education receives final approval from the U.S. Congress to become the 13th U.S. Cabinet agency. And our education got just fantastic after that. Maybe the lamest note on this day in history, September 27, 1986, Metallica bass player Cliff Burton crushed to death after the band's tour bus crashed between Stockholm and Copenhagen. Then we make it into the 90s, September 27, 1995. Time Warner severs its ties with rap label Interscope rather than release the debut album by the Dog Pound. 1996, in Afghanistan, the Taliban capture the capital city of Kabul after driving out President Rabbani and executing former leader Mohammad Najibullah. This is all pre-9/11. It's the build-up. September 27, 1996, the Julie Inn, a tanker ship, spills thousands of gallons of oil after crashing into the $1 Million Bridge in Portland, Maine. 1998, the Google Internet search engine retroactively claims this date as its birthday. 2001, the Zug massacre in Zug, Switzerland. Friedrich Liebacher shoots 18, killing 14, and then himself. 2002, Vince Neil of Motley Crue pleads guilty to misdemeanor battery charge for allegedly attacking a record producer in West Hollywood in April 2002. In 2003, on this day, the Smart 1 satellite is launched, and on 2004, on this day, record producer Phil Spector charged with murder in the shooting death of Lana Clarkson at his mansion in 2003.
911, what are you reporting?
Hi, my name is Adriano. I think my boss killed somebody.
Now, why do you believe he may have killed somebody?
Because you have a lady on the floor and he has a gun in his hand.
The first responders were confronted with almost the unbelievable.
Minutes after the 911 call, police arrive at 1700 South Grandview Drive, known in the working-class suburb of Alhambra, California, as the Castle. After speaking with Adriano de Souza, the homeowner's driver, police approached the well-fortified house.
It was virtually impossible to see anything except the fence. You had to walk up 88 stone steps.
There's foliage and trees and thickets all over. Keep in mind, they didn't know what they were confronting at this point. There was a record of a gunshot being fired, someone potentially dead. As they made it up to the top of the motor court, the back door opened. And much to their surprise, Phil Spector stepped out.
Then there was Phil Spector, bizarre looking as ever, almost incoherent because he had been drinking a lot.
When police command music legend 63-year-old Phil Spector to put his hands in the air, he refuses.
Phil Spector is not complying with anything the police are demanding. Put your hands up, he puts his hands down, puts his hands behind his back.
And then he reached for something in his nightshirt. God knows what it was, especially when you're dealing with Phil Spector.
He begins backing into the foyer. They don't want to lose that sight line, he might arm himself. So they immediately pull out a taser and they fire. It hangs up in this blousy shirt that he's wearing, and it does not work. So they rush him with a ballistic shield, knock him flat on his back. The other officers rush past the first two officers that knocked Phil Spector down, and that's the first time that law enforcement saw her body laying there, blood all over her face.
I was working in a call center for a cable company in Colorado. I was in the middle of a call. A supervisor came up to me and said, "Is your father the Phil Spector?" "Well, your father was just arrested for murder." And I went straight to the break room, and there it was on TV.
Legendary music producer Phil Spector was booked for investigation of murder today.
I always figured at some point somebody would probably end up getting shot. I knew his temper. I knew his affinity towards guns.
I was in New York and was watching television, and it came on the news, and I was really stupefied. He was a boyhood hero of mine.
Writer Robert Sam Anson wants to know, how did this legend of the music world end up with blood on his hands?
Put your hands up and put your back against the wall of sound, Phil Spector. Charged on this day in 2004. I did not know he resisted arrest and they tried to tase him unsuccessfully on Friday. Really interesting stories that I did not know about Steve McQueen. That's coming up on the Friday edition of your Morning Monarchy, but let's continue to blast off this day in history. September 27th, 2007, NASA launches the Dawn probe. And in 2008, CNSA astronaut Zhai Ziyang becomes the first Chinese person to perform a spacewalk while flying on the Shenzhou 7. September 27th, 2010, tickets to Michael Jackson's This Is It went on sale. And on September 27th, 2012, a mass shooting takes place at the Accent Signage System in Minneapolis, Minnesota, killing 6, including the gunman who committed suicide and wounding 2 others. 5 years ago today. Published to Media Monarchy a decade ago today, read your own Homeland Security travel dossier. You can now request the unclassified parts thanks to the Identity Project, or at least you could a decade ago. Ron Paul has become an internet sensation, so says MSNBC, and the U.S. may have let bin Laden slip away again. So reported NBC a decade ago today. Those stories and more on MediaMonarchy.com. Birthdays today is kind of a hilarious weak sauce list of birthdays, except for a couple of really good ones. The rest, pretty crappy. September 27th, Harry Blackstone Sr., of course, the magician. Arthur Penn, famed director. Things like Bonnie and Clyde. Bud Powell, pianist and composer. Then we start to head downhill. It's also Wilford Brimley's birthday, Don Cornelius, Meatloaf, Sean Cassidy, and the last good one, Trainspotting author Irvine Welsh, born on this day. The other birthdays on September 27th, Stephen Jenkins from Third Eye Blind, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Gwyneth Paltrow, Carrie Brownstein from Portlandia, Brad Arnold, the singer from Three Doors Down, Lil Wayne, and Avril Lavigne. All celebrating birthdays today. Woo! But I got more awesome new music from Peak Portland. My friends, the Wild Ones, have a brand new record coming out October 6th. Called Mirror Touch. It's going to be up on Top Shelf Records. Let's listen to the first taste from Wild Ones called Paresthesia as our song of the day today as we wrap up the Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for taking part and being here. And reminding you, as always, my friends, like Jello Biafra said, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
That's all I need. Young and free, avoid everything when the weight is too heavy. Is it gonna be the last time? This has gotta be the last time. It's coming down on me. I'll forget everything I know. Always pushing you away, and now I'm on my own. I wish I could rewind. Lost in the crowd, every place I go. Feeling sorry for myself when I'm home alone. I'm not right inside. All my life when I'm down on me, then I'm down on you. Thought you'd never ever leave. Oh, that's all I need. Young and free, avoid everything when the weight is too heavy. This has gotta be the last time. This has gotta be the last time. Will you be down for me? I'll forget everything I know. I was pushing you away and now I'm on my own. I wish I could rewind. All my life when I'm down on me, then I'm down on you. Thought you'd never ever leave. Oh, that's all I need. Young and free, avoid everything when the weight is too heavy. This has gotta be the last time. This has gotta be the last time. Will you be down for me?
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.